Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Curious Midlife podcast. And today I'm really excited because I have an adventurer, an author, a action and adventurer podcaster, one of the first female podcasters for action and adventures as well, and now published author of an amazing book called Will to Wild, which is a beautiful concept, name, title. California born and bred, the amazing Shelby Stanger. So hi, Shelby.
Stop. I'm like waving my hand to keep going. That was a very sweet introduction. Thank you for having me.
It's all true and it's all good. And we're podcasting just up or down the road from each other here in Southern
I
California,
know
which
we
is
should have
nice.
just done this in person.
I know because we're both sat inside in rooms going, it's really hot and we should be outside. So we've met in person very briefly twice. And at both of those meetings, there was the very long legged, tall, wild man of running books, our
Chris
dear friend
McDougall.
Chris McDougall. And so the first one was at the uh
Book
Sherman
talk.
book,
Mm-hmm.
the Sherman book talk, and then recently for the Born to Run to the
Running
running
event.
group, yeah, the running club in the Santa Mujeres running
Yes,
club.
with the Santa Mujeres, who ended
Yeah,
up in my book. Thanks to
yes,
Chris. It's
yes,
a very small world.
it
And you just
is.
interviewed Katie Bowman, who was just on my podcast. So I think we're, all connected. If you're listening to this podcast, we're all connected to each other somehow.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I've been listening to your book. So I've been kind of like driving around hanging out with you for the last couple of weeks.
I'm
So I
sorry.
have this weird, and I think it's that thing of like, I really love it when authors do their own audiobooks, but it's also given me a real sense of like, I've just been hanging out with Shelby, which has felt,
I'm wearing a red dress right now, and my cheeks might be as red as the dress, but
oh,
it's all
but
good.
it's so nice. And it
Well,
was
thank you.
really great to hear your story because also, although, here in Southern California, there is, it's the quintessential surf community. It's, we have this beautiful climate here. So we can be outdoors and active every day, like with ease. Like I'm from the UK, I was born in the rain. And so when people say, like, oh, do you want to go to that park or gym? I'm always like, no, I'm just going to go outside. I'm always going to go outside. Like it's perfect summertime every single day. And it doesn't get old and I'm always grateful and it's beautiful. So can you just give like I mean it's never a short concise story, but some people may look at your profile and think like, well, of course she became an action adventure podcaster. Of course she became an author writing about adventures and all of those things. But that's not really the case in terms of what moves us.
Yeah, I think some people are just propelled by all sorts of things, but for me, I'm wrote about the will to wild, but really this book is disguised as how to deal with fear. And I think if you look at me, people think that I'm just this unafraid adventure girl, and the truth is I'm scared all the time about everything. And adventure became a part of my life because I thought it was healing. And then I realized it could be used as a catalyst to change. So I grew up in Southern California. My parents were East Coasters. My dad was a dentist. My mom was a teacher. And so I was always curious about all sorts of things as a kid. I read a little bit as a kid, but I was pretty hyperactive. I was more interested in writing and interviewing people. So when podcasting came along, it really was the perfect medium for me. Career wise, I wanted to be a journalist out of the gate. I went to school for journalism. I actually had an adventure column in my local newspaper. I was just always so curious about people who took this path less traveled. Like I had these East Coast parents, and the story was you get a job, you go to a really good school, you get a great job, you get married, you have kids. And whenever I met someone who didn't do that, I was always really excited. And
Mm-hmm.
there was all sorts of characters where I grew up in San Diego. I remember being a little kid and there was this guy who wore rollerblades and would rollerblade in slow motion down the boardwalk in Mission Beach. And he'd been a doctor and he like just did this on the side. And I thought that was just radical. And I've always just been curious about people who bucked the norm, took the path less traveled, but also those people who have done something wild, which is an idea that usually people say you're crazy for doing, or an idea that doesn't make sense on paper, but propels your life forward. And for me, I was really lucky. I grew up playing soccer and a ton of stick and ball sports, but I found surfing when when I turned 12, basically. And the summer before, my father had passed away. He was a dentist and he passed away of a sudden heart attack. And it was just so crazy because he said, "Good night. I love you." He went to the hospital to pick up a prescription for what he thought was a stomach ache. And on the way home, he had a heart attack in his car and crashed and died from the heart attack, which was from an undetected heart disease. And I just took with that the lesson that life is short. You just never know what's going to happen. And that summer, I went to surf camp. And it actually was a camp where you could take sailing and water skiing. And not many girls took the surfing camp part. This was in like the early 90s, 1991. And I took surfing. I was with a bunch of cute boys. And then one day I had a female instructor, fell in love with her. She was awesome. She was like, became my babysitter. She ended up starting an all-woman surfing school and like living with our family out of the back of our house years later. But when I was 12 and I learned to surf, I got a lot of answers that I never got on land in the water sitting on my surfboard. And I think surfing is really cool. Like a lot of adventure sports, it tricks you into meditating and being still and quiet. And these are things that I was not as a hyperactive little kid. And it was cathartic. And it's also really fun and thrilling and it's unpredictable and you build courage while surfing. I mean, there's nothing like adventure sports that help you build courage. You can do a lot of things to change your life. You can go take psychedelics, you can go to gurus, you can go to therapy. But I still believe that the best way to build courage is to go do something that gets you out of your comfort zone, kind of scares you, but is also out in nature. And it just has to be scary to you, you know? I'm never going to climb Mount Everest. I have no desire. I'm never going to ride my bike from Alaska to Mexico. I'm not even going to ride my bike probably from Oceanside to my house, although maybe I will. It's not that far. You know, everybody's wild idea or will to wild is different. And I've just seen since I was a kid that pursuing wild ideas and the will to wild can be impactful. So when I was 16, I ended up teaching surfing at this all-woman surf school and pushing women into waves. And women would come for a weekend or a week-long clinic. And afterwards, like a couple of weeks later, I'd often get a call from one of them. Someone would saying they quit their job, they moved across the country to a place with a better beach, or they were ending a relationship that they needed to end for good. And then their life would never be the same again. And the changes they would make for the positive would just keep going and going and going. So that's kind of why I wrote this book. There'd just been this thing percolating in my head. There was all these self-help books out there. And I was like, great, we can go take mushrooms, fine. But there's side effects. The side effects of nature are decreased blood pressure, you know, healthier immune system, relaxed nervous system. And the side effects of nature are just so profound that my only goal with this book is I hope people get into nature a little bit more.
I mean, it's really a beautiful ode and a story of gratitude to nature, I think, from your journey. And like the shock of a parent dying suddenly at age 12, and then to find, solace and make sense of the world in the water is, I think it's something that a lot of people, especially if you have a relationship with nature, and especially one with the water. Like I've always been a water baby, and I just love it. Like whether you're, in the water, if you do cold plunge in the winter here, and it's never really that cold. I mean, it's cold, but it's not cold,
50,
cold.
56.
Yeah, 56.
About cold as it gets.
Yeah. But, I have friends in Canada who are cold plunging.
They're
it's
amazing.
Like, oh shit. Yeah. You're really cold up there.
We're soft in San Diego. It's okay.
My resilience of coming from the southwest of England versus being in San Diego now, it's like,
you just get softer. It's okay.
I got soft. And so I actually like to sort of challenge that sometimes as well, of like,
For you.
no, I'll go in and stay and it's cold. Or even noticing how people, when it rains here, people like just that they don't go out, they cancel arrangements, because
The
we're
world ends.
the world ends because we use it or lose it in so many ways. Like, I don't know how to drive in the snow because I'm never exposed to driving in the snow. So I'm really bad at driving in the snow. But like rain, I know I can deal with rain all day long. Um, but this idea of, and I see this a lot in the parkour world as well, of making friends with fear. Like, fear is not something to move away from. Fear is something to have a conversation with. And also these elements of bravery is something that we don't always see. Like, there are some very, visual examples of like, here's someone hanging from a rock, and here's someone on a massive wave, and here's someone. There are these extreme ideas, but sometimes the bravery is just like, I've been injured. Like last summer, I hurt my knee surfing, and it was just being lazy. It was so annoying to myself because I was on my way back in, and I kind of had the board and I sort of pushed it to the side, which is a really lazy, horrible thing to do. And then it just yanked my leash and twisted my knee and my leg backwards. And it was like, I just knew at the time, like, that's not a good sound. My knee's never been in that position before. And like, it was fine. I could actually walk out of the water, which was always a relief. But then for the next 6 weeks, I was like walking up hills backwards, going, I didn't tear my meniscus. And I was like, every day I was going, I love my knee. My knee's amazing. My knee's amazing. I have the best knee in the world. Everything's going to be fine. But then I was really scared to go back in the water, to even just stand in the water and feel the current, to have that like, oh, something's going to take me out of position. Something's going to be moving there. So to an outsider, to an observer, I was just a woman stood thigh high in the water. Whereas for me to go back and stand thigh high in the water was an act of bravery. It was like, I have to face the fear of re-injury, the fear of more pain in my body, the fear of like, oh, am I going to stop surfing? Or I stop this? Because I'm not very good anyway. And it's actually, surfing's really hard. Like, surfing is, and every time I walk in the water, I have this thing where I'm always very humble to nature. And I always have this like, okay, what's Mother Nature going to dish up today? Like, no matter how she's looking out there, no matter how friendly or in tune those conditions are, I'm always like, okay, what's Mother Nature going to dish up today? Because every day's a new day. Very humble to these moments. And then also I find myself paddling out. And if there's a set coming in, I'm paddling out and I just go, Jesus fucking Christ, Jesus fucking Christ. And I'm not a religious person, and it just comes out. I just have this Jesus fucking Christ like
People get
moment.
religious in big waves.
There's nothing that isn't
It's humbling.
inappropriate. Inappropriate, yeah. So with your book, it's not just it's an incredible, it's an instruction manual for knowing how to step outside of your comfort zone and to embrace these ideas of adventure. And adventure doesn't have to be going surfing. It doesn't have to be like trekking across the ice. And like, there are some incredible stories in your book, which I really loved. And but then also you bring it back to the everyday and these different elements of what are the kind of things, if someone doesn't have much adventure in their life. Like, I talk to a lot of women, especially those who are in kind of perimenopause and menopause, and like life feels a bit heavy, a bit stuck. Like, my body's going wild, and now you want me to do wild as well. Like, I'm just managing every day. And I always say, like, we all need a fun coach. Like, people have life coaches and they have health coaches and they have movement coaches. I'm a big advocate for like, but do you have fun coaches in your life? Do you have people who are your fun coach, who you resonate with, or are you devoid of joy? Have we started to not embrace enough joy and delight and curiosity? So what are some of the things that are kind of on your like to-do list if someone wants to start to embrace more adventure?
Well, thank you for the idea to become a fun coach.
Oh, do it. You're so a fun coach.
You're so
Like you are
sweet.
if you
I
don't
just
know
had
it.
like 9 kids over this weekend, and all their parents were out of the pool, and they're like, Shelby, you deal. And I just had to like make up games without playing Marco Polo because it's so annoying to the neighbors, including myself. And it was really hard, but it was fun. I
Yeah.
think you could make cleaning up trash fun. Okay, so if you're perimenopausal, menopausal, and you're exhausted anyway, and you've got kids and you've got demands on your time, you just had on Katie Bowman, who's a big proponent of walking.
Hmm.
And I think walking outside in nature is like really awesome. But I think to make it more fun, you walk to a destination that has beverages or food that you would like to eat. Go there, have your Starbucks, your ice cream, your cocktail, your yummy food, and Uber home. And that is really fun and it gets you out. But I just
Yeah.
think that if you've got some inertia, the only way to break inertia is movement. And you've got to get out of your head and you got to move your body. And when you move your body, it kicks in your endorphins and your hormones. And no one has ever complained and regretted going for a walk outside. You might regret going for a run, you might regret some other things, but no one regrets going for a walk. And rarely do people regret doing yoga either. But, to just get outside of nature, go walk somewhere cool that ends in like, okay, if you can't, if you don't have anywhere that ends with beverages that involves a little bit of nature, whether that's seeing the ocean or seeing some trees, then go walk in a park and put inside of a fanny pack or a backpack or a little pitcher of water, put your favorite drink, put some favorite foods, and go somewhere in a park or a trail. And you'll just feel so much better about yourself.
Yeah. And I always think that as well, the magic happens outside. There are just things that happen to our vision, our brain, this kind of optic flow of just noticing things, like noticing things in nature and just this ever changing way. Like even like if every morning, I walk my dog and then I come back and I walk the garden and I look at stuff and I'm always noticing like, oh, that's growing and like, oh, that's not so happy. Or
Gardening is huge. Like if you can, we don't have a garden. Like we really don't. We have a couple succulents. That's it. But if you can garden, I think that's game changer. I've had on a couple of guests recently who are gardeners, and there's a lot of magic in gardening. And it's a great way to get outside, connect with plants, connect with plants you eat, plants you don't eat,
Mhm.
plants you just look at, get yourself a little dirty. That's an adventure. And that's a great way to adventure. Gardening.
And you talk in your book as well about flow and awe. So can you just kind of share some of your own thoughts or experiences around the importance of flow and awe?
Flow just gets us into the present moment. And often we experience flow when we're in the present moment. And awe is this thing and feeling that we experience when we feel a lot of emotions at once. Often, so let's talk about some examples of awe. I think awe happens a lot in nature because in nature, there's so many things that are unpredictable. And right now in our life, a lot of things are predictable. You can kind of look at your directions on a map, you can look at where you're going, and we kind of already know ahead of time what our experiences are going to be like. But in nature, there's a lot of things that'll happen that you just can't plan for. Even just going surfing, a dolphin can leap up out of the ocean. You might see a fish. No waves are the same. I mean, that's why I think we love nature. So, awe is a feeling that takes us out of our head. It makes us feel small and more connected to each other all at the same time. It often makes us feel grateful when we experience it. And if before we experienced awe, we were in a crappy mood, maybe we had a bad day at work, maybe we got in a fight with our partner or our boss or whatever. After after experiencing awe, we immediately forget about our bad mood. We feel happy. I'll just give you an example. So I could paddle out and surf. I could have had a crappy mood. I see a dolphin leap or a great white shark, which I saw like a year ago, leap
Oh,
out of the
wow.
ocean. And I'd been in a kind of a crappy mood, but immediately after seeing that, my jaw dropped.
Mm-hmm.
And I instantly felt smaller. I was like, wow,
Mm-hmm.
there's things so
Mm-hmm.
much greater and bigger than me in this ocean. I
Mm-hmm.
felt gratitude and I completely forgot why I was in a bad mood.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, I just was stoked. I was happy. There's nothing that you can do in life that makes you feel all those emotions at once, like without any terrible side effects. You know, you can take drugs, but they're going to give you side effects. But
Mm-hmm.
nothing can instantly take me out of my head like seeing a dolphin leap or a great orange sunset or the sunrise out of the mountains or a view from a vista. So awe happens. It's this feeling that happens and makes our jaws drop. And those times that you can have awe when you see your baby
Mm-hmm.
often. You know, you can experience awe with a partner. You can experience awe when you listen to a certain song. But I think the ability to experience awe in nature is really abundant because of the unpredictability of it and because of the beauty of it. And I
Mm-hmm.
think when we see things that are so beautiful all the time, it just puts us in such a glamorous mood.
Mm-hmm.
So it's important to one, be present, but two, sometimes we just need to get out of our own heads. And that's where awe comes in. You know, when we can feel, I think the easiest way to experience awe is to go outside at night and look up. If you look up
Mm-hmm.
at stars, you can't help but realize how small we are and yet how insignificant we are, which means some of the problems that we're really worked up about are very small when you think about the fact that we're just a small dot in this galaxy that is part of other galaxies and other galaxies. Like when you think about that, your mind can't even comprehend it. And it just makes whatever you're worrying about seem really trivial. And that's a good thing because
Yeah.
sometimes we take ourselves too seriously.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I take what I do seriously, but I don't take myself seriously because
Good.
what's the point? Like, I don't think that gets anyone really anywhere. And also, I mean, a couple of nights ago, my dog was sick and he's very rarely sick. And he was asking, and then he actually was, yeah, he was sick. And then I thought he was good. And then at like 1 o'clock in the morning, he was asking to go out. So it was like, okay, let's go for a walk. And we went for a walk at 1 o'clock in the morning around the neighborhood. And it was magical. And it was that sense of the sky and the air and having, you know, the suburban neighborhood being quiet and there were no cars and you can hear the rustle of the leaves and you know, it was kind of like, okay, it's too early for rabbits and the coyotes will be out in a few hours. And it was just these moments of, I think when we're in big nature, so like the ocean is big nature, or you know, you go, you know, you go to Utah or you're in the UK, you go to the Highlands, or you're in these spaces which take us out of this very kind of, you know, fast-paced modern living kind of rhythm of, you know, like the chatter of our thoughts is like the chatter of, well, it's like the cars and the coming and the going and the to do, and like I've got a Zoom meeting and I've got this, and then social media and then the email and then watching the news and da 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 da. And there's a sense of uh my friend calls it time travel when we're in nature. So I would have like a very like busy day and then a friend invited me to go sailing, and those 2 hours of sailing changed the time of my day. Like time slowed down. So just those 2 hours of like leaving the marina and going out and just pootling around a little bit and catching some wind and then coming back in was like, today was an incredible day. But it could have been just a non-eventful day without this sense of perspective, without a sense of awe, without a sense of grace, and a sense also of like, we're these tiny little things on this piece of rock just spinning through a universe full of other really big things and rocks. And I think that this, we are connected to our environment, and a lot of our modern life disconnects us from our environment, whereas our nature time and our movement through nature is the tool to reconnect that with what we're doing. So what have been, because you interview not just for your book but through your podcast, which is Wild Ideas Worth Living, which was bought by REI. So REI, for the non-US listeners, is the most loved and adored outdoor and adventure kind of equipment shop in the US. Like I don't, and maybe it's the people I hang out with as well, but like everyone loves REI.
It is a really well loved brand. It's pretty cool.
It's really exceptional, I think. And I don't even have a comparison for anything in Europe that's like that is and is as loved as REI. So you are through your podcast there and obviously with the research with the book, you're kind of just in this world of adventurers. So what are the I mean, from who do like the big and the small and the famous and the really the kind of innovators, whether it's like Chris Sharma or whether it's the guy who started Patagonia or the like Vital Climbing Gym, which is local to us here, which is a really amazing, beautiful project. Um, what are the common traits that are kind of ever present when talking to adventurers?
I think they have a lot of energy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think adventurers tend to be pretty grateful and have a relationship with nature. And that's it. I'm really interested in people who've taken an idea that someone said they were crazy for and they did it anyway. And they're usually positive people who've done something. I'm not interested in ideas that are bad, that like harm the world, but ideas that are positive, that,
Mm-hmm.
only people only said they were crazy because they were scared. And I think most adventurers are brave. Once you do an adventure, it builds courage and it gives you courage to do the next thing. And, wild ideas, as I say in the book, spread like wildfire. So you do one thing, it leads to another, which leads to another and another and another. And it just keeps going. So that's pretty much the common trait that they all share. And they're generally pretty stoked. But I would also say that a lot of adventurers are pretty sensitive.
Mm-hmm.
They're very in touch with their bodies. And, for me, I use adventure as a way to kind of get in touch with my mental side as well.
Mm-hmm. And you shared quite a bit in the book about your kind of journey
Yeah.
with that. If you're happy to share anything
Yeah.
here.
No, I mean, I struggled a lot as a kid with, a little bit of wavering depression, anxiety. I mean, I've been diagnosed with all sorts of stuff. I'm not sure I believe in labels as much, but mental health illness runs deep in my family. And it's something and so does addiction. It's something I had to pay really careful attention to. And in 2009 I was in a job that was awesome on paper and it was awesome in real life too. It just really wasn't what I wanted to be doing with my life, and I hated commuting in traffic to my job. And today I could have worked from home, but back then in 2009 I couldn't. It was the height of the recession and quitting made zero sense on paper. I was also in a relationship with a guy that was like great on paper and he's a super nice guy, but I just wasn't in love with him. Like I was over it. We just were too different. And I was afraid to break up with him. I mean, for a lot of reasons. And, I felt like by that point in my life, I needed to be married and to start having kids. I was 29. And I think that a lot of people who are in their young 20s think that they have to have it all figured out. And I think people in their 30s think they have to have it all figured out. And the truth is, we never have to have it all figured out. Nobody does.
There is no figured
We're
out.
all just
It's
like
just
figuring it out as we go.
yeah.
Like there's no manual to life. And I spiraled into a pretty deep depression. And it was hard to tell because I'm generally a very happy person. And for me, depression looked a little different. It looked like being really moody and kind of bitchy. And it felt like PMS, but on steroids. And I tried to exercise my way through it. I tried to yoga my way through it. And I went to therapy, and every therapist wanted me to take medication, and I was resistant. Then I caved, and I didn't like it. And it was just this vicious cycle. And eventually, I just got the courage to kind of quit my job and end the relationship. And after that, everything really started improving. And what I realized is that sometimes I realized that one, if you need help, you should get help. And that's courageous and brave. And you should get help for sure. So I don't want people to think that like I'm anti-therapy or anti-drugs, because if you need them, you should use them. And I think therapy is really great. But for me, quitting my job and making the decision to actually go do this thing really helped untangle the mess I was in. And I'm not going to say it was all peaches and ice cream after that. Like I've had plenty of bumps and bruises along the way, but I feel best when I'm living a life with intention and purpose and grace. And that doesn't mean that it doesn't come with hardships. It just means that I feel better all around.
Mm-hmm.
And I also realized that, like, while I adventure, all this is kind of made up. We're just this small dot. We have a limited time on Earth. We might as well make the best out of it. And I think one important component of the book, and something I've learned in my own journey with, mental wellness and more and adventure, is kindness as a tool.
Mm-hmm.
And kindness is such a game changer. And that means not just being kind to other people, but really being kind to yourself, to the thoughts that you feed yourself, to the food that you feed yourself, to the things that you say to yourself, to the content that you consume, and the choices you make on a day-to-day basis. Like, live your life with kindness, because it's a game changer. And if you do one thing and you take one thing from this book, it's to, like, go on an adventure of kindness, mostly to yourself, and then spread that to other people along the way.
And I think for some people that's such a hard journey. That's such a hard adventure. I have clients who I talk about these acts of self-compassion, and people are so hard on themselves, and they think that they should do this and they should do that, and then
You
this
should
kind
on
of
yourself. Like, I was a person who grew up as a total perfectionist, overachiever, and I shitted on myself all the time. And I still sometimes do that. I should have this by this age and this by that age. And it's all bullshit. And once you can let go of that, your life will be really free.
yeah. And I think also this differentiation between, I think I'm preaching to the converted here. Like, movement is good, all movement is good, and exercise is different than movement, but also movement and exercise is different than adventure. There's different elements to that.
Yeah, I think, when you're adventuring, you happen to be moving and exercising, but you really don't know. Like, that is like the last thing on your mind. Adventure is getting outside and doing something a little uncomfortable, but seeing something beautiful along the way.
Yeah.
To me, that's kind of what adventure is. And my definition with adventure continues to evolve. Last week, Johnny and I, my partner and I, went to Big Bear, which is a mountain town 3 hours east of kind of Orange County, LA, but 3 hours from San Diego. And I didn't really have any high expectations. I was like, Southern California mountain town in the summer. How great can it be? And it blew me away. It was epic.
Mm-hmm.
The lake was pretty full. We had a lot of rain this year, and the trails were so green and so lush. I was
The
blown
trees up
away.
there are amazing.
Yeah, I had no idea that we had such beautiful pine trees and some
Mm-hmm.
redwood trees just a little ways away in Southern California. And California is a pretty magical state, but I don't know. There's something about being around trees and water that make me feel so calm and so connected and so much better. And I don't know many people who
Who
disagree with
don't?
me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't do that for.
I've
So,
met every now and again, I come across someone who is is very afraid of nature. So it kind of agitates them. Like, they don't want the dirt, they don't want to get dirty. They have those kind of things, and it's always like, you have so much untapped joy in your everyday way of existing in this world once you start to make friends with nature.
that's interesting. I taught women to surf for years, and some of them couldn't swim. And
Mm-hmm.
you can still learn to surf if you can't swim. You just need to take precautions. Go with a guide. And it's wild how they would change and how their relationship would change. And, like, not everybody gets the opportunity and access to learn how to swim. So I'm not always sure what people's stories are when they show up to surf camp and they haven't been taught to swim before. It always kind of breaks my heart. But yeah, once you get into nature, it is a little dirty. There's certain parts of nature I still don't like. Like, everybody's like, oh, how many times have you been through hiking? And the truth is never. Like, I don't really love camping. And I work for a company that sells camping gear. That's kind of like the main thing REI does, but I don't love it. I really like showering at the end
Uh-huh.
of a long hike and
Yeah.
making food in the kitchen. And that's okay. Like, you don't have to
Yeah.
love being dirty all the time. You can still have your creature comforts and get into nature and you could microdose nature, to use a popular fun term that's being
Mhm.
used today.
Yeah. And I think all of the people I know who are kind of having adventures, there's all these different scales. Like I have one friend who's about to sell most of his things and go and live on a boat. And there's a lot of firsts. And something that
Like live on a boat and sail it, or live on a boat and live it at the dock.
live on a boat and sail, like spending half of the year in the Mediterranean and then sailing across and then going to Barbados and then, oh yeah, like, so there's
Sounds
a
pretty
lot of talk.
radical.
Yes. So, even sailing from last summer, I sailed from here and I don't know how to sail. I'm just like, I'm the crew member who just does what they're told. And we went to Catalina and that was a first. And like,
Cool.
we'd never kind of, you know, done an anchorage anywhere. So it was like, okay, first time we ever did an anchorage was in Newport, and there were all these like little kids doing their sailing school, and it was like, oh my god, are we spinning around? Are we there? Da, da, da. But the celebration and the feeling afterwards of that confidence of like, we survived the first, we could do the first, and we had to dare to do the first, but we also prepared for the first. Like, even as we were approaching the harbor in Catalina, we were like, watching the YouTube videos of like, this is the thing you're supposed to be aware of, and you're supposed to know about this and do that. And you're on the boat, and I had to do the thing at the front and like hook the thing and do this and do that. And this is all part of the adventure. And I think to embrace the unknowns, to choose to do things that you're probably not going to be good at, and you just have like the first, my friends and I always joke, well, the first rule of travel, don't die. Second rule, have fun.
It's kind of cool. I mean, I think you're right. Like when you go choose to do an adventure, you already know you're going to probably, especially if it's a new thing, you're going to suck. And that's
Yeah,
great because then you don't have all this pressure on yourself. So you can just have joy doing it and trying it. And
yeah.
even if you don't make it to the end or the top or the finish line, or you get to the other anchorage point, you have fun along the way and you learn something.
And then to think back and be like, once you've done it a few times, and then you're like, oh, do you remember that first time we did it and we were really terrible and we messed up, and we went round in circles, and I had to shout abort, abort, and the anchor did this and dragged us there. But in the book as well, you talk about the joy of missing out, as well as the joy of participating, the joy of the adventures that we're doing. So can you explain the joy of missing out?
Yeah, I think with Instagram, it's easy to have FOMO, which is fear of
Loads
missing
of it.
out. And I go on Instagram and I see friends like vacationing in these radical places, and I'm sure I create FOMO for lots of people too with my pictures. But the key is like sometimes you should try your best to have JOMO, which is the joy of missing out, instead of FOMO. Like we can sit here and compare our lives to everybody else, but comparison is the biggest thief of joy. I mean, that is like the oldest saying, but it's so absolutely true. Instead, find joy in front of your nose, in front of your face, and enjoy not, when you are not having an adventure and you're just doing your everyday life, enjoy it. And then you can
Yeah.
go create your own cool adventure some other time, or you can adventure right out your front door, however you adventure, whether that's gardening or bird watching or identifying plants or going surfing out front or going for a hike. I think there's a lot of ways to just have an adventure, and it doesn't have to be radical. It can be local.
Yeah, I have a lot of little micro adventures, especially when I'm kind of walking my dog, and then I have that little kind of parkour, sort of like, the whole world is a playground. Oh, where can I go over? Where can I go under? Where can I go through? And then also like, where can I do it with Pax, my 80-pound dog? Like, can
So
he go through?
cool.
Can he go over? Can we do that? Can we go there? And having also this idea that, someone may be looking, and here's the other thing, like here in Southern California, there's really no norm in terms of how people choose to kind of move, or how they're dressing, and I love being barefoot. And you can go to the bank and the supermarket being barefoot because everyone just presumes like you just came from the beach. And I wasn't even sure to begin with, so I would actually walk around carrying my flip-flops. And because I always thought, well, then someone may just think, well, oh, she's broken her flip-flops. That's why she's walking barefoot.
Totally.
And it was always just a way to be like, no, I'm just choosing to walk barefoot, but kind of conforming a little bit because I'm having these thoughts. And now like I just walk barefoot if it's not too hot.
That's cool.
Which is really nice. But I think these micro adventures, which take these little bits, these moments of bravery to individuate and choose, like, this is how I want to live. And it's not upsetting to anyone. Like I'm not disrupting the core of societal norms. I'm not disrupting those things. And there's so much more bandwidth for adventure and fun and self-exploration than I think is kind of scheduled into most people's lives or is discussed in a way that it's really appreciated to have, to have gratitude, to really be in a sense of grace for the natural world around us is something for me that's like an everyday kind of like, wow, look at that plant. And here as well, I look at sometimes, I look at the cactus and I'm like, wow, like how you live, like what an incredible thing. Like, how do you grow here? This is, stunning. And then you could be by a river, or I mean, southern, like California really is the most beautiful outdoor playground in terms of you can surf and snowboard in the same day. And that as someone from the southwest of England is like, that blows my mind that at certain times of the year. And I remember staying with a friend one time and I remember swimming in the morning and then we drove to Big Bear and we snowboarded later that day. And it was like, I started this morning swimming in the beach. This
So
is
cool.
wild.
So cool.
This is wild. So we're really spoiled here. But at the same time, I see people like not using the outdoors. And the same where, where I'm from, there are people who don't make the most of the beautiful things that are around them. And there is, I always feel this opportunity to heal and to have more ease in your life and to find that joy of like, I'm choosing to not go and do that thing today because do you know what? Maybe I need to just like spend an afternoon in the hammock and that's my act of kindness and listen to the birds and then
totally
go for a sunset walk. And that's the most beautiful restorative thing.
I think we've made adventure really overcomplicated too. Like, we've kind of like painted these pictures of these dudes like just climbing mountains, and adventure can be a lot of things. It could be a picnic at the beach, it could be a barbecue in your backyard, it could be outdoor dining, al fresco. I mean, it doesn't have to be extreme. It
Yeah.
can just be right in front of you. And
I,
it's just a little tweak, just like adding a little bit of fun, just like what you said.
yeah, I love that. And you give a really nice kind of invitation to start looking for signs of adventure or of what's possible to you. And I'm a great believer in serendipity. And so where did this come from for you?
I guess because I didn't grow up religious, sometimes I'm like, I wish there was just an answer that I could have. And I didn't grow up being able to pray to a God and get that answer. So I kind of sent out a universal signal, which I guess is the same thing as praying to a God. And I was like, help me find this solution that doesn't make sense on paper. I have a hard time making decisions. And I think a lot of people suffer from decision fatigue. So, when it comes to big decisions like, should I take this job? Should I quit my job? Should I date this guy? Should I dump him? When I was younger, I would just kind of put it out in the universe and was like, what should I do? And I remember, when I made the decision to work at Vans, I asked the universe to show me a sign. And literally, I was at dinner and looked down, and the waiter was wearing his Vans size stripe on his shoe.
There you go.
Had he been wearing Chuck Taylors, who knows?
Second thoughts.
So exactly. So I think signs can also come from, they can point us to where we shouldn't go. There's things I've tried and just kept experiencing pain and try. And most of these are jobs that I just took for money or things that I did because they looked cool or sounded cool, or I just really didn't want to do them, I would tend to run in roadblock and after roadblock after roadblock after roadblock. That's a sign. Like if you keep
Mhm.
hitting roadblocks, your sign is telling you to go a different direction. Like, or if you keep getting injured doing something, or you keep getting sick doing something, that's also a sign. And I interviewed this woman, Steph Jagger, who broke the record for the most vertical feet skied in a year, and she started her book off with a sign, and her sign was really cool. She was riding the chairlift at Whistler Mountain, and she was in this great job. She had just bought a condo in Canada. She was in her like late 20s, and she just missed skiing at Whistler, which is an activity she did as a kid. And she asked her friends, like, hey, what if we skied during the weekdays, like every day, or I skied around the world? And her friends laughed, and it kind of bothered her. And then as she was going to get off the chairlift, she saw a sign, and it was an actual sign that said lift restraining device. And that side referred to the metal chairlift bar that you have to lift up to ski down the mountain and get off your chair. And she just said that sign kept following her, and it went with her to work and went with her back home and to work the next day. She thought about it, and she needed to lift the restraining device on her entire life. And so she ended up refinancing her house, or mortgaging her house, taking on side jobs. And she ended up raising enough money to a year later start skiing around the world, where she ended up meeting her husband and launching this whole other career years later. For me, there was a point in my life where I was just stuck. And you can read about it in the book because it's kind of a funny and sad story at the same time. But like, I was so stuck that I got stuck in traffic to the point where like a semi truck overturned across an entire LA freeway, which is pretty brutal. And I just had to sit there with my own thoughts. And after that, I was like, okay, I'm literally stuck. I need to do something to get out of being to unstuck myself. And that was a sign. And then I continued to have signs and more signs after that. So I think if we just ask the universe for signs and then we pay attention, they'll come to us. And often we use signs when we're a little stuck or we need to make a decision that's hard or doesn't make sense on paper.
Yeah, and I think our ability to endure hardness and suffering and stay stuck is pretty remarkable. And
I do think we can stay stuck forever if we let ourselves. And that's why we have to pay attention. And, if you're drinking a glass of wine every night and you need it, or you're starting to like be obnoxious to customer service agents or getting in little fights, you should start to pay attention because those are signs too.
definitely. And I see people, um, I think we all see people, whether it's like, how they're driving in traffic or in the car park or in a queue or something like that. And you can just see when people are out of balance
Yeah.
or,
I try to send those people love because I've been there. And, at our society right now is hard. Like there's a lot of inequality. There's a lot of things to be upset with. And not everybody starts from the same starting line. And I think we just have to give each other some grace and love because some people are stuck and sometimes it's not their fault.
yeah, absolutely. And you talked as well about the women in their 50s in your book.
Yeah, they're radical. I think older women is where it's at. I have a friend who's doing a whole book on adventurous women over 50 that you should talk to. She's pretty cool.
I
And
love it.
I just think that, that's where the wisdom is. Older women and more women are adventuring. It wasn't really something that people did when my mom was a kid. She's like, it's so cool that you do this. Like, no one did this when I was a kid. My mom loves to walk long distances, especially if there's like a shopping mall or like a store, 'cause she likes to shop. But yeah, there's a group of ladies who live down the street from us who boogie board. They call themselves the boogie board wave chasers, and the youngest is like 56 and the oldest is 96. And they boogie board 3 times a week in the Pacific Ocean. They share camaraderie, joy. Many have said that the boogie board club has changed their relationship to their health, because when you boogie board, you lie on this foam board, you ride it all the way to the shore, and then you have to literally get from your belly to your feet and walk back in the ocean against the current to get back out to where the breaking waves are that you're going to catch all over again. You do that enough times, one woman was like, I got 10,000 steps in an hour. That's a lot of steps going back and forth, just catching waves. It's a great workout. And they hoot and they holler and they talk smack, and it's awesome. And that's exactly how my girlfriends are and I are when we go surfing. And it's just, I didn't get it when adults would say, like, I'm always going to be 26, or, they said comments like, you don't really change, but you don't. Your mind stays youthful. Like, you might have an older body, but I think all of us like to have that fun, youthful, jovial side of us. And yeah, it's really cool. There's also a woman who skied to across the South Pole with her husband while undergoing menopause. And her story is hilarious because
she had the moon cup. She had her diva cup.
She had a diva cup that I'm going to let you read the book, but I'm just going to tell you it got stuck in the snow. And what happens next is pretty funny. And I taught women to surf for years, and most of them were over 50. And they're a hoot and they're super fun. So yeah, I think you can adventure at any age. And it's really cool to see, older women with silver hair in the lineup surfing these days. I didn't ever see that as a kid, and I'm starting to see that more.
And I've noticed here as well that I love seeing, I'm 53. I love seeing women in their 60s and 70s surfing, and they help me. Like, they are so generous and willing with their wisdom. And there was one day when I was standing on the beach. I went with my friend, and my friends who I surf with are really good surfers, and they're always very encouraging. And I'm not a good surfer, and I'm not being humble or modest. I'm just like,
yeah, you just didn't grow up doing it.
I'm just where, I'm just where I'm at with it. And I always go like, it's a bit big. And they always go, oh, you've surfed bigger. And I'm always like, I don't think I have. Like, really don't think I have. But their encouragement, and I always go, I'm just going to look at it for a bit longer. And they paddle out, and I stand and I look, and I always think, like, do I have any business being out there today? Or like, is that a good stress, or is that's just chaos, and this is a really poor decision, or this is a really important decision? And I remember one day I was stood there for age, it must have been a while, and this lady came up to me with the most beautiful, like, sparkle in her eyes, white silver hair, in her early 70s, and she was like, she just looked at me, she went, what are you going to do? And I was just like, I don't know. I don't know if I have any business out there today. And we stayed there, and she was like, well, you could go in here, and how do you feel about that? And I was like, well, I don't know. And we had this like beautiful conversation for like 20 minutes. And then I was like, I'm going to go in. I think it's going to be good. I think it's going to be fine today. And so many times in the water, when also if I'm struggling to get out, if I'm just like, oh, okay, I'm just stuck on the inside, I can't find the way out, I just wait until an older woman who's really good comes in, and then I just follow her. Smart. And then they always go like, you good? And I'm like, I'm good.
Representation matters. Like, we need to see people who look like us out on the water. I mean, I think the most classic example is when you're a little kid and you didn't think you could do something, and then you saw another kid do it. You're like, oh, okay, I can do it. It's the same as when you're old, or, your skin's a different color. I think it's really helpful to see someone who looks like us do what we're doing. Whenever my girlfriends are out surfing, I tend to think the surf is much smaller. Like, they calm me down. Like, when it's big and scary, if they're out there laughing and hooting and hollering and having a good time, like, it's not scary. But if my dude comes out with me and he's like, oh, it is big, like, that does not make me feel better. It just intimidates the heck out of me.
I mean, yeah, see it to be it. And I think, as you said, like early on in that story, when you had the surf instructor, like, in the same way in my parkour journey, as soon as there started to become female parkour coaches, this physical empathy changed all the bullshit that was running around my head of like, oh, well, that's easy for you. Look at your legs, look at how strong you are.
Yeah, that's
And
so
then
interesting.
this physical empathy of them, my friend Auntie, who, this beautiful woman would just be like, oh, okay, now we're going to like do like 20 wall runs followed by this vault and this, da, 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 da. And I knew that before the class, she had gone to the spot and she'd done everything that she was going to ask us to do. And it was a women's only parkour class. And there were like 20 of us. And she said, like, she was like, well, we just stay here until everyone's done it. And it was magical. It was one of those like, you could almost see the bullshit going through everyone's head, and then everyone like going, no, 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 that's not valid. Like just the sheer physical presence of Auntie as a female parkour coach took away all my bullshit
That's
of
awesome.
I can't do this, I can't do that, da 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 da. So it's I think this role of seeing and celebrating more women who are having adventures at every age in all these different arenas, in all these different environments. Like Kirsten, I can't remember her name, who just won this crazy sailing race where you only have technology from the 60s and you go single all around the world. And this South African lady, I think she's like 38 or 39, and you're not allowed to, set foot ashore. No one's allowed to help you. They have no satellite, anything. It's like old radio weather charts going through the most dangerous seas in the world. She had a smile on her face the whole time. And I remember just thinking like the mental resilience that this woman has, but also matched with joy, was one of the most inspiring things I've seen of like this sense of possibility. I think it's a really interesting time that we're living in that kind of opens all of that up to us as well. And then you also talk about these trail angels. So can you share what that is for people who've never heard of that?
Yeah, I mean, on the PCT, which is the Pacific Crest Trail and the Appalachian Trail, there are these people that come out and literally help hikers because hikers are only carrying what they can fit in their backpack. And that's usually not a lot. And there's sections of the PCT where there's not water and people can get pretty thirsty out there. And it's really hard to pack fresh fruit when you're traveling with backpack on. It's just heavy. It's not the smartest thing to bring backpacking. And people who've done the hike before always reminisce on the times where they wish they could have just had like a cookie or an ice cold water or a yummy soft drink or a beer in the middle of the trail. And trail angels are people who literally come out on the trail and feed hikers fresh fruit and water, and they give them rides to towns to get gear and resupply boxes. And this actually happens during Pacific Crest Trail hiking season, which is going on now, but it's been an exceptionally snowy year, so it's a little bit altered. It happens on the Appalachian Trail. It sometimes happens on other trails. And there's actually a couple in San Diego, and they're like full-time trail angels. They were so blown away by the magic of trail magic on the PCT when they did it so many years ago that they decided to open their home in San Diego, which is really close to the start of the PCT, to hikers who wanted to come in before they started, had a place to stay, could send their stuff to ahead of time, and could just relax for a few days until they started their big hike and their big journey. And what they realized is that they just love being and putting themselves in a position to be around people who are on the cusp of a life-changing experience. And it's a San Diego couple. They publish their phone number on the internet for people to
Amazing.
come and stay. They provide hikers 2 fresh meals a day. They drive them to the AT&T store to get phone plans. A lot of them are from Europe, so they
Mm-hmm.
need phones. They take them to REI to get gear and to go on the trail. And I figured they just fundraised for it at the very least. And this couple, Barney and Sandy Mann, you could look them up on the internet. Scout and Frodo are their trail names. They do this for free out of the kindness of their heart because they love it. And they just ask people to pay it forward. And what I learned from them is that like experiencing trail magic and the help of a trail angel is awesome. But what's really awesome is to be a trail angel yourself. And that could look like a lot of things. That could be teaching someone to surf. It could be taking someone on a hike for the first time. It could be providing a picnic for a friend in need and taking them out into nature, taking someone to do parkour. Yeah, so that was kind of an interesting thing that I really wanted to include in the book. It's something that I hadn't heard of until I started doing my podcast, Trail Magic, or what a trail angel was. And it's such a big metaphor for life. And the whole saying that you get so much more from giving than you ever get from getting is so
Mm-hmm.
true.
Yeah. And since, listening to your book, I've been really aware of that. So even if I'm like walking my dog in the evening by the coast, and there's one spot where this guy always like fills this huge bucket of water,
Yeah, that's
and
trail
my
magic for
my
the
dog
dog.
just is. I'm like, what a beautiful trail angel. Like,
And I think you can do it in life too. Like there's a neighbor who's pregnant that was just like exhausted today, and she has a 2-year-old as well. And I just could tell she was tired. And I was at the coffee shop and I was like, I'm gonna get her a cookie. And I knocked on her door and delivered an iced tea and a cookie for her. And she was like, this is the best thing anybody's ever given me. Like she just needed a chocolate chip cookie. It can be really that simple. Like you can make someone's day. It could be buying someone behind you in line a coffee or a tea. And I just think carrying on radical acts of random kindness is really powerful. And that's one way how to adventure, I think.
I love it. Yeah. And like you say, you just give forward. And this element of community, that when we have adventures, I never underestimate the kindness of strangers. And like we grow up with like stranger danger and all of that. And there is like, okay, be aware and listen to your gut instinct and all of those things. And yet there have been so many times where just the kindness of strangers has been extraordinary. Like, you break down in the middle of the Baja Peninsula at 8 o'clock at night, and it's 3 hours to the next town. And then that person in the next town goes like, oh, my brother's a mechanic and we'll do this and we'll drive out there and we'll get it all fixed and everything will be fine. And it's beautiful, but it's something that like those adventures really warm us. Like they feel that grace and gratitude, I think, and to again have less fear.
Yeah, I mean, I experienced the most trail magic actually outside of the United States in New Zealand. I found people so nice there. I think people in the US are super nice too. And I think there's spots of our country that where trail magic is just like so abundant. Um, but yeah, when I was in New Zealand, there were people that just like if you left your flip-flops on the beach, someone brought them home with like a pie. Like people were just so kind there.
I mean, I was in Brazil last year, and in the middle of a big city. And sometimes when you travel, you have a certain way of doing things, and you're always like, okay, my wallet goes in this one, and my phone goes in this pocket, and this one has a zip, and this one does that. Da, da. And I'd worn clothes where all of those kind of protocols went out the window, and I ended up dropping and losing my California driving license. And this is a really important document, the California driving license. And I got back with my friends, and I was like, shit, I can't find my driving license. And it wasn't like, and some places in Brazil are really not safe, and it's known for pickpockets, and it's known for this, or it's known for that. And I was going to be leaving in like 2 days' time. And it was like, it's gone. I don't know. The next morning, I had an email, and the subject line was driving license. This lady's son had found my driving license. It had fallen out of the pocket. I dropped it. He'd found the driving license. He was a trainee priest. He went back and he told his mother, like, I found this American driving license. We should just, give it in to the police. And she said, don't do that. It'll never find its way back to this lady. So she looked me up online. She took the name on the driving license. She Googled me. She found my website. It matched a picture of the license and me. She sent me an email, which was, and it says at the beginning, like, sorry for this is an automatic translation or something. And then she basically said, like, we have your driving license, this and this, da 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 da
That's so
da.
cool.
And then, so my friends, helped reply. And then the day after, we met up and we had a coffee. And as soon as I said, she gave me a big hug. I have pictures with me and this lady,
That's
and
so cool.
and it was wonderful. It's like things can happen. You can lose stuff or whatever. But again, this kindness of strangers and the kindness of many things that would happen. So just to kind of sum up a little bit in terms of, this kind of way of like finding more balance and finding meaning in life through adventure, whether it's the big or the really wild, whether it's big wild or whether it's local wild. And for you, what do you have to have an adventure? Or like, what are the elements that make a good adventure for you?
I think if it just gets you out of your everyday routine, it's a good
Mm-hmm.
adventure. And it needs to have some joy. You need to be able to pack your emergency candy, whatever that looks like for you, whether it's like a yummy treat or a glass of wine or a kombucha or some watermelon, even though it's totally inconvenient to carry watermelon on a trail. Like, don't make it a sufferfest unless that's your thing. And I personally like sharing adventures with friends. I think they're more fun. If you want to do a solo one, though, like that can be really great at building courage. And sometimes we don't have friends who want to go on adventures with us. So we just go do them anyway. But adventure can mean a lot of things. It just has to get you out of your comfort zone and your everyday routine. And you got to find some joy doing it. It doesn't mean that everything's going to be joyful and not everything's going to go perfectly as planned, but that you enjoy the ride at least. And that if there is a sufferfest in it or something goes wrong, that at least afterwards, sometimes we can't do it during, you'll laugh along the way. Um, or at least you laugh afterwards about it. And
Oh,
I've
you
had
have a
plenty of
great story.
adventures. Yeah, where like it's not enjoyable. I paddled down a portion of the Amazon River and I wanted to wear cute outfits because they're photographers, but I thought I was gonna be wearing a bikini, but I ended up wearing capri pants because that's the only paddle pants they had made at the time. I was stand up paddling on a blow up stand up paddleboard down a portion of the Peruvian Amazon. And every square inch of my body that wasn't covered by clothing was eaten alive by bugs, even though I had 100% like terrible toxic
Doesn't
bug
matter.
spray on me. The Amazon
No.
bugs or sand fleas or whatever they were, they didn't give an F. And it was like miserable. But the trip in retrospect was absolutely incredible. And I ended up seeing something that made my jaw drop and put me in such a state of awe that it propelled me for like the next couple years and gave me courage to start a podcast, which led to me writing a book, which led me to speaking at TEDx just a couple weeks ago and doing all these podcasts. So you just never know when you go do something wild. And if it's a little miserable, it at least makes for a funny story later.
Absolutely. And I love it. I mean, I love the fact that this book exists. I love the fact that there can be two women talking about adventures and all of these things in these different domains and different ways to adapt it and to scale it. So what is next for you? What are the adventures of Shelby Stanger? What's happening
I
next?
actually am going to Europe for the first time ever. I
Oh,
mean, I've
nice.
been a little bit for work, but never really just to enjoy Europe. And so we're going to Switzerland for a week and to Spain for a week. And we're going to like a quintessential Alps town. And in Spain, we're going to Mallorca. Maybe we'll do some rock climbing. We'll see. It looks a little intimidating, but I want to try it. And, you know, personally, I would love to do more public speaking and gathering in person because screen time is so hard for me. I'm such a like a in person, I want to hug you kind of a person. And I want to work with kids and I don't know exactly what that looks like, but
Fun coach.
younger people have been, yeah, maybe I'll be a fun coach, but to older people as well. I mean, everybody says I'm a fun coach, but I don't know if people are going to pay me to be their fun coach. That would be
Oh,
so cool.
it's legit. I mean, it should be, you know,
All
just
right.
you need to start it.
I
You're a
love that. Well,
trailblazer.
thanks. You'll just be my agent. So this is great. So now you'll be working as me as my agent, taking 10%, and I'll just be, fun
I'm
coach.
in.
I
It's all
love
good.
it.
I'll do it in exchange for some surf lessons. You can
I
make
would
me a
like
better surfer.
parkour. I'm like terrible at teaching surfing now, but I would be stoked to pay you to teach me. I could use some more flexibility, and
Let's
my
go
ankles
outside
are
and
really
play.
tight. So parkour would be great. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, let's go
I'm into it.
play.
I love
Let's
that.
we'll do it. We'll do it.
Okay, we're in. Well,
That'll be
thank you for
fun.
having me. I really appreciate it.
No, a pleasure. And so the final thing, other than going to Europe, which will be fun, what are you doing for them at the moment for fun in general?
Oh, well, it is 71 degrees in the water right now. So I have been getting up, and like today I did something that I haven't done in a long time. I wore my bathing suit, put a sports bra on top of my bikini and some shorts, and I brought my surfboard down to the beach, went for a quick run barefoot in the sand, and then just took my shorts and sports bra off and jumped in the water, made my life really simple, caught like 10 super fun waves, ran back up, and I'm playing with kids. Like there's a lot of neighbor kids where I live. Some people had some babies during COVID, and all my friends have kids that are like 7, and my niece and nephews have moved from LA to San Diego, and they're 7 and 9 or 7 and 10. So I've been boogie boarding and surfing
Amazing.
with them, playing in the pool, and
Playtime.
just really leaning into what I call BKE, which people say BDE, which is big D energy, and I have big kid energy, so BKE. That's what
Yeah.
I'm going for.
BKE, I'm with you all the way. Like it's playtime. Playtime. So
Playtime.
I'm sat here now. It's really hot.
I'm so sweating. I'm like
This is
dripping.
the sweatiest podcast.
I might have to take a nap because I'm so hot. Like I don't know what. I'll just sit under a fan and nap.
I'm actually going to head to the coast
I love that.
now. And thank you so much. Where can people find you? And
I'm easy to find. You can go to shelbystanger.com. You can also get Will to Wild Adventures, Great and Small to Change Your Life, anywhere books are sold. So Amazon.com, REI, stores carry it in store and online at rei.com. You get Barnes and Noble. You can go to your local bookstore, which is always really cool. And you can also find the podcast that I host for REI. It's called Wild Ideas Worth Living. But the easiest way to find me is just Shelby Stanger. I'm on Instagram and I have a website. And yeah, I'm all over the place. So I'm pretty easy to access. And I'm available for fun coach sessions. Just
so
book a
Shelby
consulting
Stanger,
session.
yeah, fun coach. But yeah, I think the world needs more of you doing public speaking as well, because
Thank you.
you need to be heard and to bring your energy to all of those things and inviting people for more adventures, just because it kind of, and I think especially after COVID, for some people, like adventure went out of fashion and it's like the time is now.
Time is now. I mean, some people got into adventure because that's
Yeah.
the only place we could go, but like real adventures, like we need to get back in there now. And I think
Yeah.
people are going outside more than ever.
Yeah. So anyway, have a beautiful rest of your day and
Thank you.
thank you
Enjoy
so
the
much.
coast.
And let's do some parkour and jump in the water together really soon. That would be
I,
great.
I'm in. I'm in.
Thank you so much.